Welcome back to the French Rugby Podcast with me, Tim Groves, ex-Scotland international and adopted Frenchman, Johnny Beattie, and former France international, Benjamin Kaiser. We've got a very special double World Cup winning All Black guest joining us shortly. But just as importantly as that, Benji, you're back. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I never left, but it's one of those situations where you have to say yes, and Johnny was there, so he can witness. But there is I put a lot of importance in the relationships that you build with the boys, and when you're talking about upfront, especially tight five, there's guys in my career when I was young who really helped me. So if I try to open up a little bit to you guys, I was really good when I was young. No, but listen, but I was quite weak mentally. I was really good ball in hand. I was really athletic, whatever. But when it's about doing the grinding, really hard, tough motherfucker stuff of hooker, that really wasn't me. That's the main reason why I went to Left the Tigers, to be honest, because I wanted to challenge myself like that. I was like, listen, who are the toughest out there? And Leicester were definitely all the way up. So I thought it was a challenge because I always try to rise up to it. So, but I'm very comfortable to tell you that if I was so lucky at the beginning of my career, it's because I was surrounded by some absolute rugby monsters. I started in 2004. There was Rodrigo Roncero Luced, Argentinian doctor of his state, but just a butcher of a player. Sylvain Marconnet tighthead, Peter de Villiers tighthead, and the fourth one was a guy called Pablo Lemoine, probably not really renowned in the UK, but in France. Monster of a fella, like would break people in half, sort of Trevor Leota type of tackling, and hell of a scrummager. And I was surrounded by guys like that. Mike James, Bibi Radou in the second row. At the time they were bossing and policing European rugby in the rucks and all that. So I was super privileged to be surrounded by such monsters around me. And so we built a really close bond. But obviously then life goes on. Internet guys live in, back in Argentina, everywhere in France. I don't live in France anymore. We all have busy lives and stuff. So it's a bit complicated. And on Saturday, after 2 weeks ago now, after a good France-Argentina game, I'm having a few beers with Johnny and Rory Lawson, who I get along well with. And even Johnny looks at me. He's like, well, what's up? And I just looked at my phone and I got a voice note from Rodrigo Roncero. When how it just pops up, what's up? I never speak to him, but I was probably we were like the closest when I was from 2004, 2007, really close, rooming all the way together. Considering how much he snores, that's like, I should get a medal for it. But he gave me back, 1,000 times. And him and his family, I really got close with. And because I was the Frenchie who could speak Spanish, I was always, the interlink with all the RGs and stuff, and especially with him. And he's like, I'm in Paris. It's one of those challenging texts. I'm in Paris. I'll be at that bar in 1 hour. Done. And that's all I said.
There was no challenge.
It's not like, oh, I would love to see you. No. That's all I said. And then 45 seconds later, I get a text from Sylvain Marconnet. Me and Rodrigo will be at this bar in 1 hour. Done. And so obviously I text back, whatever. And then they call me in the taxi. I was like, listen, all right, this is too good to be true. I swear, Johnny, and I promise you on this, my only plan was to have a few beers with you guys and then shoot back to my parents because I have a flight the next day. And obviously went to meet them. And it was the beauty of, I was, even almost to the point of being choked up with emotion, happy of seeing them because it was just so cool. Because they're boys that I really like, and it's rare that we can just press pause, look at each other, and like, oh shit, it's like a good old, it's like 15 years ago, proper déjà vu of sharing those moments with them. The former manager of the club, Alain Elias, who was a really funny guy who then moved a bit. I don't know if you had him in Montpellier, Johnny, but he went to Montpellier for a little bit, and he's one of those charismatic. There's always one guy. Like, I don't know him personally at all, but the Welsh physio or strength and conditioning guy that they always speak about, who then went
Strigen.
Bobby.
So there's always one guy, who's sort of the life and the soul of a club. And Alain Elias was that in Stade Français. He was the only, manager that would then be betted at 7 o'clock in the morning, a planking competition, and he's there doing 9 minutes, whatever. That on a night out swore that he was going to run the Paris Marathon, and he did it. At like age 55, he almost collapsed 700 times, but he still did it. He finished it. And he was like always up there for a bet and stuff. And he was there because the boys texted him. He's like, oh, yeah, I'll be there. Done. Then Pierre Abadan comes, who now works for the Town Hall of Paris. And he's really busy with all the Olympics coming and stuff. But Gonzalo Quesada, who's coach of Stade, who I played with in 2005, came by. It was just really cool. So a beautiful night. To be honest, we didn't finish that bollocked, but pretty late. Yes.
What time?
Well, my mother, I'm sure, listens to the podcast, so I'm not going to give the time because I told her that. Well, did you really come out that time? No, sure.
You told Andre it was midnight. That's all we need to know.
But no, listen, really, really good. And I'll put you in the confidence. A couple of days after, I sent a message to Rodrigo about this whole quote in rugby of Jean-Pierre Rive, which is the casque d'or, the guy with the long blonde hair. Mm-hmm. Who's a really poetic guy. He always said rugby is a sport of mates and a ball, and when the ball is not there, the mates stay. And that's really the way that I picture it. And I told him, and he sent me a long message. I think he must have still be on the piss. He was properly caught up by emotion. Let's not wait another 10 years. You're right. So it's the beauty of those sincere human relationships. And rugby, not rugby. I'm sure you guys have got mates where you just see them 10 years after and absolutely nothing's changed. Other than the fact that he looks like Santa Claus because his hair is white and his beard is white. But other than that, absolutely nothing's changed.
And is there a Georgian equivalent of Rodrigo Roncero for last weekend, Benji? Did you get a text from a Georgian saying, meet me midnight, this bar?
No. But no, we had a really good night the night before in Georgia because I've got Eden Park shops. To all our listeners, if they want not a discount, they can ask me. But No, I've got Eden Park shops that I opened, that I partner up with. The tight head that I used to play with when I was 17, who also mentored me a little bit, who was a little bit older, went to school and stuff, who's the cousin of Julien Marchand. His name is Nicolas Marchand. Same family. And that's how I know the Marchand family so well. And we've got shops now in Bordeaux and in Toulouse. And so you see, he came over for the game. And so him, who speaks absolutely broken English, hanging out with Paul Grayson, same Laura Winter and Connor, was really good fun. But Ireland beating New Zealand just gave that extra element of motivation for us to enjoy a good time. We had a proper dinner, definitely not the same sort of rhythm in terms of intensity, but so definitely not as tired the next day.
Johnny, you were in Bordeaux as well. How was your weekend?
I ended up back. Where was I? I ended up back in Edinburgh for Scotland, South Africa with your mate Flip van der Merwe. And what a beast he is. Again, you talk about good people, smart people, intelligent people. That guy is an absolute beast. So we went from Biarritz to Stansted together. We sat down for lunch. We had a few phone calls. And every time I had a new phone call, there'd be a new pint of lager in front of me. The guy was just like, I don't know where he puts it, man. An absolute freak show. So by the time we got to Edinburgh, we were stinking. We then did all the hospitality together for Scotland, South Africa, which was great fun, a real laugh up on stage, taking the piss out of each other. And like you, I got to catch up with old rugby mates, so Dave Denton, Hugo Southwell, Tim Visser, Nathan Hines. So just good fun and really nice to catch that game. And then straight back over. So as soon as the final whistle went, was on a flight from Edinburgh to Amsterdam to Bordeaux, got in at about midnight, so missed the dinner with you guys. And then it was just the France-Georgia game that got in the way. It was actually really nice to get over, caught up with you, Benji, very briefly, a big bear hug on the way up to commentary position, caught up with Sean Edwards. I'm not sure if you bumped into Sean as well. So managed to catch up with him again really briefly. He was just mentioning how much he's enjoying living near Perpignan, enjoying getting to watch some of the Catalan Dragons, some rugby league, and he's really settled in and enjoying it with the French 15 and the French squad. So that was really cool to find out. And then that was it, onto the game commentary and back straight down the road. So not too heavy, not too much drinking. A good weekend of rugby though. This weekend's going to be a little bit more quiet with just one game, but a big game coming up. So looking forward to a rerun. What was the name? Because again, I got the name wrong. Laura Winter told me the name of the nightclub was Pussy Creamers, and I'm sure it's not the name of the nightclub. So if you're out in Paris this weekend, Benji, what's the name of it?
It's called Pousse au crime, push to the crime. But it's like
exactly.
There's this road that is pretty self-explanatory in the Quartier Saint-Germain that all the rugby lovers of France will know, called Rue de la Soif. A road of thirst. So it's pretty straightforward. There's no museums out there. Let's just tell you. It's basically bars and restaurants all over, and this has been sort of a rugby institution. It's the smallest rugby institution you would
it's amazing
considering how big the fellas are in there, but it was always the go-to place when I was young. Symbolically, I finished there after my last game after the top 14 final with Flip, We ended up very, very late, but it was good fun just to hit home, hit base, you know.
Let's have a chat about that France-Georgia game on Sunday then, before we bring in our double World Cup winning All Black to look ahead to this weekend. We were sat here a week ago talking about the changes that Fabien Galtier was rumoured to be making.
Yeah.
And he pretty much made all of them. So how did Cameron Woki go in the second row? How did Sekou Makalu get on?
Look, it was a bit of a turgid game. I'm not sure what you thought, Benji. France just sort of looked a little bit unsettled when they were on the ball. Quite a lot of unforced errors. Georgia were actually really competitive and decent for 15, 20 minutes, and then the wheels kind of came off. The people that came in, Woki was in second row. Again, his athleticism and aerial ability was great at line-out time. He forced a couple of turnovers, put real pressure on Georgia. One led directly to one of France's tries. Makalu, poor bugger. Again, first touch in backfield, throws like a 5-meter forward pass, knocked the ball on once in contact, knocked the ball out in the wide channels. Just, I don't know, almost looked like a deer in the headlights. And I genuinely, during commentary, felt bad for him, because there's not many times that you get that chance to start and it doesn't quite click. And that's been 2 or 3 games that he's been involved in and it hasn't quite gone for him. Again, the ratings that come out in the press, Benji, you have experience of this as well with Rugby Rama, like just cruel, like a 3.5 out of 10, shouldn't be playing again. But the guy just looks like, he looks unsettled. Before he'd even touched the ball, he looks unsettled on the field. It's a slightly different game plan, and he struggled to work his way in the game. But he's undoubtedly one of the most talented players in France. And as we mentioned before, like, he covers wing. I think from the speed testing they did, Benji, you'll be able to back this up or verify, he's actually the fastest player in the French squad. So an absolute freak show, full of talent, and just needs time to settle. So look, he didn't kick on. He settled in the second half a little bit. He was calling lineouts as there were changes. He called really well, everything to himself. Georgia weren't contesting, so it was easy to look good. But look, you'll be disappointed, as will the coaching side. But I just really hope that they don't turf him out. I think he's injured this weekend. And I just hope that he gets to come back, gets another chance, because undoubtedly he's got the natural talent and ability to really kick on and be a star for them. But this weekend wasn't his weekend.
He missed a shot. That's all there is to it. There was an opportunity given. He could have been a massive change against the All Blacks to say, right, he literally can be a guy who will decide whether we will do cause an upset or not. He is the guy, your X factor player, your statistics breaker, you're the guy who just thinks of something outside the box, who can make some sort of magic happen. He can. But he didn't have a good game against Georgia. Done. So that's an opportunity left again. Happens. But it's only the first or second time that it happens, and we're just very, very frustrated not to see his talent shine. So it's une occasion loupée, an opportunity that just is going to fly above his head, in front of his nose, and he's barely going to smell it. And I'm not sure when the next one is going to be, because there's some incredible back row players that are everywhere out there. Just so a lot of frustration not to see properly shine with his God-given talent, because bloody hell, he's got some. And now the rest. Well, Cameron Woki did his job. I think I agree with you, Johnny. He just did what he had to do, and I think he behaves properly. Winnie Antonio brought some solidity. He had to front up with the scrum, and globally the scrum was positive during the game. Mathis Lebel did what he had to do, brought a little bit of sparkle, a few hot steps. Could look dangerous, but gradually, overall, he only got the balls that, when everything shifts basically to the touchline, and you get it where you just have to do one side step, not go to touch, and recycle the ball. That's all there is to it. But the main element of satisfaction is just a little bit of improvement between Romain Tamac and Mathieu Jalibert's partnership, which obviously was the main thing. I think so. I was commentating just above the French staff, and I could tell that they were sort of looking, and Laurent Labitte was looking at how guys were, stepping in, stepping out. There was some really interesting moment where Romain Tamac ended up stepping in at 10, and Mathieu Jalibert was there, so there was a little bit more interaction. There's the first phase of play where they almost score with Damien Penaud on the wing, where Gaël Ficou trucks it up, and both guys are up in their hands, and you can use the passing power of the two of them. Jalibert attacking the line, hitting it flat to Romain Tamac, who in the blink of a second takes the decision of skipping a guy. That's exactly why they want him there. So it was better. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. And surely I think that's the one that's going to be renewed. So I don't want to sound overly dull, But I don't think there's much to take from that game, to be fair.
No, nothing.
Other than Georgia are getting better. Georgia have got a lot more to offer than just a positive scrum and some hard hitters. They've got some pretty big ball carriers that were just there to play, but they play really good rugby. I think that fullback Nignashvili, I think,
Just the amount of tackles he broke.
And you're gonna see him. You're gonna hear about him very, very soon. I mean, I think he's 19 or something like that. He's only broke out on the scene in top 14. He steps everything there is to it. He looks absolutely tiny, but he's really good under the high ball. Stepped in at 10 at one point because their 10 took a yellow and looked really dangerous. So they've got something. They really do have something. So that's really positive for them. The more encounters, the better. I think it's the least we owe. When I'm hearing, this whole World Rugby wanted to change the rules or allowing guys to go back to their home nations, which is a great decision if it does go through. And when Piviak was saying, we've taken so much off them, it's the least that we could do, or the least that France can do is to play pretty much at least 1/3 of their games against Georgia or against Fiji or against, all those teams where, what was it? 14 of them or something, either 23 play in France or half play in France in the very recent times. So there's a very tight connection between those guys. It used to be Argentina, but now with the Jaguares or whatever, they went back and now they're all starting to coming back now. So Georgia is our distant cousin. It's the least thing we owe. So not a lot to learn. Disappointing Makalu, better for all the guys, but mainly I think it's 60th minute when Antoine Dupont walked out with on his own 2 feet, looking fresh. I think everybody's out right, done. It's a victory. The main man is out. He's not injured. Let's move on to next week.
The weird thing as well about the game, it was very, very un-Fabian-like when France had the ball. Knowing Fabian, he'll be extremely disappointed with how they looked after the ball, how they generated decent possession and tried to attack Georgia. It was really it was one man for himself. It was not structured, and that's the exact opposite of the way Fabian coaches. So he'll have been pulling his hair out. The one thing that we did see was, again, Georgia clearly didn't analyze the game that France played against Argentina, because every time they kicked off the field, France had some sort of starter play that, with blockers, with decent lines, created absolute holes and chaos everywhere. Again, Fabien Galtier and Laurent Labitte. So it just shows you can't give France anything. They can't give them any platform. The tries they scored came from maul, came from first phase line breaks, from decent lineup breakout plays. And they're really dangerous. I think the dangerous part for France now is, how do they look after ball and how do they generate positive play when they get into multi-phase? And that's where they kind of come unstuck and they cough up the ball. And again, looking ahead to New Zealand, if you cough up turnovers against the quality of backs that the All Blacks have, you're going to be in trouble. So it was a really strange game to watch, a real arm wrestle, really physical. But because they were given that platform to play from, they managed to break Georgia down and ultimately smashed them off the pitch. But for some phases, it was really, really difficult. And when they didn't play together and when they weren't organized, they came unstuck. So it's almost a good game for the coaching staff to take apart and unpick. And Monday, Tuesday show, this is what we need to do together in these situations. This is how to look after ball better. But ultimately, when they get the platform and this is what we can do off strike, we can get the better of anybody. So parts of it are really encouraging, but they're going to have to get better. And again, as you said, you don't want to get too doom and gloom, but French press was really depressed over here. French media was really down on them. But look, there was some positive stuff, and they're going to have to, like Fabien said, they've got absolutely nothing to lose this weekend and everything to gain. So here's hoping they can lift it a little bit and make it a real game.
And from a Georgian perspective, quickly, some of the comments during the game and after the game, they weren't happy about the refereeing at all. Was there anything in that? What did you make of it?
I don't know. I heard him during the first half. I heard that was the captain, Merab, going to massacre his last name.
Sharikadze.
Yeah.
Sharikadze.
I heard him. He said he did the whole Pablo Matera quote, didn't he? He was a bit like, I know we're a small country. I know we're a small team, but I think we deserve to be ref fairly. He threw that at the 25th minute. I think he threw it just after the penalty try on the driving ball. I was like, mate, to be honest, it didn't shock me. Yes, they were extremely penalized. I think at halftime is 13-1 in terms of penalty count or something, but they were globally always in defense for the first sort of 25 minutes of the game. So it's obviously a lot. You get pinged a lot more. I did think there was a lot of penalties that were there. Every single scrummaging penalty was there. It was at least 4 or 5 of them already. So no, I don't think it was injustice.
I'd really like to see the decisions he's talking about, because again, from the commentary position, it didn't look like anything was obvious. And it looked like every time France would break the line, Georgia would be offside or there'd be some kind of fault. They were put under so much pressure that they kept coming offside or doing something ridiculous. And like their tight end, I don't know how many times he went off his feet to contest for the ball.
Yeah.
I'm like,
every pen is normal on that one. So that's
exactly.
Already, imagine, between the scrum and that one, that's already 7 out of 13.
Exactly. So I know it can seem like there's a real weight of the world against you when things are going that way, but France in some aspects of the game were utterly dominant and they were under the cosh. So look, they ended up coughing up a few cheap penalties and that's the way that, but I mean, if they are serious and they think there's things to be looked at and questioned, then it'd be great to have the images analysed properly. But again, from the commentary position, it didn't look like there was anything untoward. It looked like it was what it was.
And we will come on to talking about selection for this weekend and the All Blacks later on. But you mentioned the Jalibert-Entamak combination, and we chatted about it last week, as we have done for weeks before as well.
Yeah.
Is there any danger that they go away from that this weekend, or is it definitely those two?
I don't think so. Otherwise, the easy way would have been to change last week because there's 6-day turnaround. You give them both a bit of time. I don't see it happening. No, they could have even, I don't know, they could have potentially getting them both out, leave Antoine Dupont, whatever it is, leave Sekou Makalu on the wing and get them both out, whatever it is. I see them starting 10 and 12 again. They had a plan. They're putting in motion. They had to readjust against Argentina because things weren't going the way they wanted, and that's why they have Jonathan on the bench, Jonathan Danty, to be there just in case they want to change their strategy. And fair play to Fabien and the staff. 50th minute to change a guy like Antoine Dupont is not a small decision, but they had to do it because that was what was necessary to win that first game, and they did it. So I would be extremely surprised. I think we're talking 99% chance for the both of them to go again. And they stuck to it. They're going to learn from it, and they're going to need to be extraordinary to beat the All Blacks. But that's what we expected of them.
Especially after you mentioned Benji, that's the best they've been. It's only game 2 together, but that's undoubtedly the best. I know it's Georgia they're playing against. It's not top quality opposition, but it's the first time you really saw in multi-phase what the intertwine, able to lift their heads up and call to space, pass to space, again use that passing quality and use that dual distributor that we hadn't seen before. And again, once you see both those guys in space with time, they're such good runners as well. The pair of them, they're phenomenal talents. So look, it's 2 games in, and I think Fabien started this with a plan that that's what he needed to beat the All Blacks if they were going to do it. So there's no way they're going to change now.
And how many teams try to beat the All Blacks by just putting the biggest bloody pack and the biggest bloody line they could possibly?
Ain't going to work.
Right? If it was that easy to beat them, a lot of teams would have done it. It's not the case. So I think from the get-go, the idea was to say, right, Vincent, Vakatawa, whatever, they're not here. We need to adapt. Fair enough. And if we need to adapt, then why not? Let's be clever about it. Let's put the best 2 players that we've got on there, and especially because their type of playing is maybe going to be the difference maker between just doing another game like everybody else when you're at the 50th minute and you're down by 1 point and you ended up, conceding 30 against the All Blacks, or actually seriously having 2 guys who can control the game, use that strategy, use maybe some kicking game, put them under pressure, make them scratch their heads a bit more than just a normal physical plan of we're going to, burst a hole through a defense. And they're the 2 perfect guys to do it.
Right, let's have a look ahead to the big one this weekend now. France against the All Blacks. And this is where we were going to bring in a double World Cup winning former All Black. But he was at the French equivalent of the Oscars, the French rugby equivalent of the Oscars last night. And we think he might be a bit tired tonight. What's going on, Benji?
In France, was les amis de mes amis sont mes amis. So the friends of my friends are my friends. So basically, because I went on the piss and I skipped one, I think Jerome just followed my trend.
It's your fault.
Yeah, it's completely my fault. I'm setting an unprecedented, so they just attitude reflects leadership, right? So it's a bit of that. I don't know. All I know is that when you're 2-time World Cup champion and that the ABs inside out, whether you have them this week or next week, it's a treat. So we can wait a week and be patient.
When you've won 2 World Cups, you can do what you want, can't you? We'll wait, Jerome. We'll
exactly. Attitude reflects leadership. Is that a Remember the Titans quote that you've just thrown out on this podcast, Benjamin Kaiser? Yes.
100%. I love that.
I'm loving it. Loving it. Yeah, Jerome messaged last night saying he was out with Joe Rocococo. So I'd imagine there's quite a few Toulouse boys that won some awards last night. So I think we can excuse them. They've done enough, but hopefully they'll join us next week.
It looks like a good night at those Oscars. Have you ever been, Benji?
Yeah, so it's one of those things. So I saw that it's the Oscars were organized by Midi Olympique. Midi Olympique is sort of the French rugby Bible. It's this yellow piece of newspaper originally that would connect everyone. I remember being 14 or 15, and you would look at the under 16s results. It has every single result that you could possibly find, right? So it's really like that. And then it became obviously a website. It's all digital now, but they keep those traditions of throwing some crazy good parties. Where I mean, look, in the same room you had the whole starting 15, the 2011 World Cup final that they lost against the ABs. So the Arinaldo Doki, Jean-Baptiste Poux, Barcela, Damien Traille, Morgan Parra, Yashvili, Julien Bonner, Pascal Papé, all that generation, Rougerie and all those guys, they were all there in one. And it's not the federation, it's Midi Olympique, who decides to call them 10 years after. We might as well have a good night and take a good picture. It's
Which
one of
was
those cool
cool.
moments. And then you always have the Oscars where you've got the new generation of the Cyril Bays and the Julien Marchand, and all the Toulouse boys are carving it. And you only had Jerome Kano, John Eales, and was it Gareth Edwards, I think, who was there. So you also have some absolute rugby legends who come. They're all happy to be there and just to hang around. The only thing that always shocked me, and that's proper French, is that bloody hell you don't do it the week of the ABs. Just do it some other week whenever you want, but don't do it the week where Marcoussis is an hour away from Paris. So to get yourself inside Paris, you need to take some sort of taxis and stuff. Like Antoine Dupont, let him be in a hot tub somewhere. Let him be in a cryotherapy thing, a sleeping chamber and all that. But we have to put it that week. So I've been to those things, yes. Normally after a long day of double training in between international tests where you're flogged and you just don't want to speak to anyone. So I'm guessing Antoine Dupont, that's the added responsibilities that you have when you're captain, and you've basically got every single title and trophy that you could possibly have in the last 3 years.
Did you ever win anything, Benji?
No. Probably
Any
not.
nominations?
I think I was the unofficial nicest bloke to have a beer with, but that wasn't a competition.
I noticed as well, you mentioned that photo of the 2011 team. I think there was only 2 people that didn't make it, one of which was Marc Livremont, the coach. They called him Les Sales Gosses. So you can imagine why he wasn't there. Wouldn't have been exactly welcome.
Let's look ahead to the All Black game this weekend then. And France have lost the last 14 against New Zealand since 2009. Hate to bring you down, Benji.
Don't take it. They're not the only one, all right?
True, but is this the time, Benji? Is this the time?
I don't know, but I'm all across everything that I've got in my body. I don't think it's ever a time to take them. It's never a good time or a bad time or whatever. All I know is that they haven't lost 2 in a trot, or the only time they lost 2 consecutively is I didn't look this up. I'm just spilling somebody else's info here. Don't get me
recently
wrong. Absolutely. But it was recently. Was it Argentina and Australia back to back? And that's the last time in this decade.
Yeah.
Or in the last 10 years. So obviously it doesn't happen very often. They're an outstanding team. Now they got bullied against Ireland. They didn't just lose. They really got bluntly dominated, and they're even fighting for their lives on that line for 5-6 minutes consecutively before the end of the first half for Ireland, when we thought, holy shit, maybe they let it go, they let it slip once again, and then again they came back in the second half. So it's not like a small intercept quarterfinal 2007 in Cardiff, France, New Zealand in the World Cup. They beat them. What an upset. It was just a crazy game with a forward pass that wasn't taken back, or try that was given for a forward pass. They got blown out of the park. So that really means that they can be dominated. That's what I'm trying to say. That they were beaten by a better side, and Ireland played beautifully in that game. So this doesn't teach us much for our game, but it just means that if France perform an incredible game, they can beat them. I think they will need to bring on something special. They will need to outperform them. They will need to outplay them, out-heart them, out-discipline them. They will have to have, you mentioned the strategy of Fabien Galtier and stuff. I'm sure he's going to have some clever thing inside his pockets. Sean Edwards is going to have to come up with some clever thing, to put them under pressure. We're going to have the same line-out platform. We're going to have the same skill. And the only thing that I'm hoping is that Antoine Dupont has been pretty quiet for the last 2 weeks. He's only going to play maybe start against Aaron Smith, who, I remember we spoke about this a couple of months ago, gave them the title of best player in the world. And all of a sudden they come and they play against each other. because there's an injuries there. So that's a clin d'œil du destin, a blink from faith, and I believe in that. So whatever happens, I want to see how France can measure up against the best, and obviously all the All Blacks are part of the best, and then let the best team win.
And does that Ireland win not show France how it's done, Johnny? Can France replicate that? Do they have to play a different way?
France essentially have to play their perfect game. I'd say last week Ireland, like when you break it down, there were certain aspects that it was their perfect game. That the line speed, the pressure they put New Zealand under made them look ordinary at times, which is extremely rare to see happen at international level. It doesn't happen essentially ever to the All Blacks. But the incessant line speed, the physicality, the way they caught them on the gain line, Sean Edwards will have noted all of that. And they absolutely have to replicate that defensive performance and quash anything that New Zealand do in attack. But what was really interesting by Ireland was how they attacked, how they were able to retain the ball, how they got every contact correct, how they were their numbers, how they threatened the AB's defensive line, and they did it time and time again. They held onto ball, and New Zealand couldn't get near it. Like, there's been a lot of criticism as well of Blackadder of being an absolute workhorse, but not as physical. They just physically couldn't affect Ireland. And that's just not something in World Rugby you're used to seeing, to the All Blacks looking a little bit ordinary or normal, for want of another word, in the physical aspects of the game. So France have the physical capability to do it. But defensively, they're going to have to do it time and time again on the gain line. Defensively, again, against Georgia and against Argentina, they look solid. They're much better than they ever have been defensively, in my opinion, under Sean Edwards. But the key, having watched the last two games for France, will be their attack. If they're able to retain possession, if they can pressurize this Kiwi defense time and time again and put them under pressure, and when they get opportunities, convert their points. So, look, I think what Ireland showed and proved last week is that even though you have less firepower, if you have your perfect game and New Zealand are off because you pressurize them by 5 or 6 or 7%, anything can happen. And again, it wasn't a massive margin of victory in the end, but it was just enough. And I think that's exactly the same. If France are to win this weekend, there's going to be a massive step up in pretty much everything they've showed in the last 2 weekends. But anything's possible. So it's possible, it can be done, but they essentially have to have their perfect game, and they have to pressurize New Zealand for 80 minutes and make sure that they can't breathe. It's going to take a massive effort from the crowd as well. Like, people will be desperate to see this game. It's the first test as well of the 2023 World Cup for France and New Zealand. And this is a massive showdown of bragging rights, of knowing what to expect in a year and a half's time. And it's huge for the support that's back in the stadium, which again, Benji, you've noticed in Bordeaux. Incredible again to have fans back. It was the same for Argentina, but there's only 2 of the 3 tiers open at the Stade de France. And the French 15-23 is going to need every single tier, all 3 tiers open. It'll be a sellout if they're going to get pushed home and beat New Zealand. It's going to be incredibly tough. You never know, but they have to be perfect in pretty much everything they do.
But this one is going to be absolutely jam-packed. And I think it was sold out 6 months ago. The place is going to be absolutely buzzing. It is going to be an extraordinary moment of sport. I consider that we're really mega privileged to be there for that day. It's going to be absolutely incredible. I mean, I've got shivers just even thinking about it. Just 2 points that are really important and that are really well spotted by you, Johnny, is how did Ireland win? They relentlessly kept the ball possession and attacked, and they were absolutely incredible, to a point where you're like, oh, you're beginning to be silly. You need to kick in the corners. You're overexposing yourself. But I think they had in their mind 2 things that were really important to say. If we're going to actually have a shot at beating them, you need to go over and beyond your limit of risk taking in terms of ball possession. So you need to overplay, right? The thing that Clermont we were world champions at, but all of a sudden it was counter fire at some point. And secondly, they knew that the All Blacks is not a team that you can beat by 1 point. Impossible. You need to beat them by at least 8. And that's in their mindset. They were constantly saying, we need to be one converted try safe. And I thought it was really clever in the second half because they were dominant, right? They were ahead, right? Most of the game. I think they were only behind in the score for 20 minutes or something. And it was never enough. And there's moments where you're like, right, I'm 3 points ahead, 6 points ahead. I can start to control. I can kick in the corners. I can, see how it goes. I can give away just a little bit of possession. And that's when they kill you. That's when they absolutely take you by the throat and they chop you in pieces. And they were all over the place in the second half, and they scored one brilliant try under the sticks. Ooh, they're back in business. And that's where the Irish are so clever, is that they didn't stop playing. They didn't try to control something that was uncontrollable until they were at +9. And did you see the imagery of the guys and stuff? They were at +6, 4 minutes or 6 minutes to the game. They were playing left, right, and center. They were not controlling. They were not being in strategy. Johnny Sexton was not turning the corner and, bombing high balls and just hoping to get it back. And that's what was really clever. So where I do agree with you, I think France has got a little bit more firepower or striking power, whatever you want to say it. So maybe they won't need to hold that ball as long, but if they can get inspired by something that the Irish did, is relentlessly impose your ball possession. And secondly, always aim to be more than 7, which means never let your foot off the pedal, even if you're at +6.
And to back you up with stats, Benji, the All Blacks made in the first half of last week's game 158 tackles, which is the most by a tier 1 nation in 6 years, which just shows how much possession Ireland retained. But again, there's not many teams in the world with that little possession having to be forced into making that many tackles that win games. So they made 231 in the end, which again is a ridiculous stat. But there's not many, like that's if you're playing complete wet weather rugby, Glasgow against Ulster, and it's horrible, you might expect one-sided dominance, loads of tackles, and you might eke 3 points. And it's that kind of game. But the way Ireland dominated possession, New Zealand were forced to soak and absorb. And they just kept getting pegged back and pegged back. And again, you mentioned the firepower. France do have the firepower, but in terms of, I'm looking at clearers, I'm looking at structures, I'm looking at cells together, working together. That was the one bit that worries me from that Georgia performance, was they were a little bit disjointed. And if you're going to step up and hold the ball against New Zealand, even though you have a bit more fire and a wee bit more power, just that next level of organization. And I'm sure that's what Fabian will have said in the review. He'll have showed all of the images of one player busting off the back of them all by himself without support runners, or somebody doing a pick and go in the wrong direction when they have a certain system for how they want to pick and go, and saying, look, if we're going to keep the ball against these boys, we have to do every single level and every single step. Has to be, yes, done with passion and power, but it has to be organized and we have to be together, like the Irish were. That's what they're going to have to do if they win.
And it might be a disadvantage for France that the All Blacks lost last weekend, because you mentioned it, Benji. They don't lose 2 in a row very often. But Johnny mentioned the tackle count there. I don't know if you've ever played in a game where you've made 231 tackles. That's going to take it out of you, isn't it?
I don't know, mate. Let's not forget it's a 6-day turnaround for France, whether it's a 7-day turnaround for the ABs. I think I saw Lina Brown, the center, is out. They've got 750 guys behind. I don't think that will be the excuse. It's also the last game of their season, if I'm not mistaken. So there's also that element of finishing on high, give it all. But France are going to be backed by 85,000 madmen and women and children and grandparents or whatever who are going to go full tilt. So there's good and bad in both situations. I think it's a bit an unpredictable one. I don't think you want to start trying to make in the calculations of, how many are they going to be tired? Are they this? Are they going to focus on France? Focus on what Johnny said. Hold the ball, go full tilt, go at +8. Back yourself, back your firepower, back your talent, and just have a proper go at it.
And we mentioned him earlier on, Sekou Makalu is out, but also, Benji, your man crush, Julien Manchon, is going to be missing, isn't he? So how big a blow is that?
I think that's massive, unfortunately. Really, really gutted for him. So like I said, I was with his cousin in the car. He dropped me back at the airport, and we called Julien's uncle, his cousin's dad, and they were livid. They were like, oh, it's a big blow. I've been in those positions when I think he must have bust either the cartilage or a rib or something in the rib cage. But as you can imagine, 900 kgs pushing at each other, twisting and turning and popping. And when you're in the middle, stuck there with both your arms out, you can't just buckle down. And mostly what happens is they get so twisted that something breaks. And it's extremely powerful. And I think you saw his face at it when it busted.
Wincing.
He was broken from inside, was limped off a couple of meters. Fair play to him, tried to go for the next scrum. And as soon as he bent, just bending over, not even pushing in the scrum, just bending over, was too much pain and he has to come off. So I don't think there's going to be any miracle. I think it's a huge blow because at the moment he's definitely top 3 world hooker, probably top 2. And it would have been so interesting to see him play against Cody Taylor, who's also in the top 3. And again, you need all your weapons out there to go. And I think Johnny BT being a sneaky little thing when he mentioned the player breaking out out the back of a mall. You were speaking about Peato Movaka, who completely thought about the try line, about him, and try to create something. Peato Movaka is an incredibly talented player. He doesn't have the same. He's not the same leader as Julien Marchand, and he doesn't have the same, at the moment, rugby ability instead of overall package. So they are going to miss him. They are really, really going to miss him. I think it's a big blow. And personally, just for him, after losing a final because he broke his knee, after losing this because of suspension, after losing, I mean, poor thing. I think he deserves to play the All Blacks. It's going to be a hell of an opportunity. But let's just hope that he pins down in his agenda the 8th of September 2023, being the next time that he plays them in Paris.
And aside from Marchand, what are we expecting from Fabien Galtier in terms of selection as well as his tactics?
I think Baye and Movaka are given starters. Tighthead, honestly, is still a question mark. I think Demba Bemba will be on the bench because he's your perfect impact player.
Yeah.
And do you go for the reliability of Winnie Antonio, or do we bring back Mohamed Hawass? I think Hawass will start.
Same.
But, and then, I mean, if you look at the second row, it's going to be a big call. But I think Thibaut Flamand did sensationally well again when he came on. I mean, boys, it's not to blow up his trumpet, but when I saw him play, I noticed him quite a bit more because we chatted to him and he was such a lovely guy and he's got such a good story. But my word, his work rate is sensational. It's absolutely phenomenal. Like, I was watching it because him and big Paul Villemse arrived, and I've got nothing against Paul Villemse, but he tackles 4 times more than Paul. Just because he tackles and he's back up in the blink of a fucking second.
He's athletic, man.
He's just back up nonstop. And I'm not talking about the chop tackle where, you can sort of use your legs to spin around and get back up. Quite a lot of guys have got that one. I'm talking, those really, the 3-man pod forwards that after a slow ball,
the T-bones
flying at you, and you've got to dive in the knees. It's a bit of a sacrifice sort of type of tackle. Well, he dives in there for some, I don't know how he does it. And he's still 2 meters tall. Like, he's a huge thing. And he comes out and stuff. So I'm really, really impressed by it. And I think that's how you beat the All Blacks. So that was my point by saying having Jalibert and Ntamak. Yes, you want to try to match athleticism with athleticism. And you want guys who are going to be there and be working their socks off. So I reckon he's grabbed that number 4 jersey and he's going to keep it with probably... Romain Tao didn't have the biggest game against Georgia, so I think Paul Villemse will probably take back number 5. So go back to the starting 4 and 5 for the Argentina. In the back row is going to be a funny old chat. But
and so back row, you've basically got Gelon, Cro, and Aldrit that started, and then do you bring Woki back in, or because again the back row that played, like Aldrit was decent, but the other boys didn't really fire. But again, Woki brings that bit of something special, a bit of a point of difference, especially line-out time.
I think Woki is definitely a starter with Gelon. And then the third one is the decision. Do you put Gelon at 6 and then you put Aldrit back at 8? Or do you leave Gelon at 8 like he did against Argentina? And then you put Kroos, who's a good player, mate. He's a really good player. Doesn't look
and a line-out caller.
But he's a proper... But Woki was good in line-out.
Yeah.
So that's the big call. I see Woki at 6, Aldrit at 8, and Gelon at 7. But I could be wrong because Aldrit didn't have the most extraordinary game against Georgia either. But you might want to balance with a bit more power. I don't know.
I would, and then I would also bet that they're not going to go a 6-2 split again. Obviously, go a bit more balanced. You're playing a completely different game against different opposition, so that 6-2 split is gone. It's then whether you bring in Gabin Villiers back in to start if Mathis Lebel drops out and Villiers comes back.
Mathis Lebel, to be fair, he covers a bit of everything.
He's great as well, but Villiers is just, he's got a point of difference again. He's so good at competing for ball, so rapid. His kick chase is awesome. So he'd be my starter coming back in. And the other one, again, French press, I didn't really think about this one, but was Melvin Jaminet calling for him to be dropped. But I think, geez, like the way he's goal kicking, I mean, yes, there was a couple of high balls that didn't quite go his way, but to call for Brice Dulin to come back in now, I don't think so. I would stick with Melvin Jaminet, but afterwards, the rest of the team, I think, picks itself, or the back line, certainly.
So no, if you have to go back, I think I'll stick to Melvin Jaminet if you think about, it's a good point actually that you're making about the 6-2 bench. If you go back to 5-3, then Brice Dulin could be your perfect, experienced, can cover a bit of everything, winger and fullback on the bench with Jonathan Danty and Luku. And you stick obviously to the same Gaël Ficou, Jalibert and stuff, and Dupont and all his mates. And then the fours, like you said, Aldrid at 8, Cameron Vauquier at 6, Chenonge at 7. That's how I would go with Thibaut Flamand and Big Paul Villemc. Hawass probably starting at tight head with Movaka and Cyril Bay. Done.
Not long to go now until we get your predictions in for that game. But first, the nominations for World Player of the Year were released this week. Antoine Dupont is in there, up against Maro Itoje, Michael Hooper, Samu Kerevi.
How many world players, European? I mean, I'm completely lost here. I thought he just won something a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months. Oh, no, it was 6 days. That was European Player of the Year, then Six Nations Player of the Year.
Clean sweep, mate.
He's got the Oscar this week as
Oscar
well.
last night.
So he won. I'm completely lost. Six Nations, so he won it. He was Player of Six Nations. Then he was European Player of the Year. He wasn't he? At his first time.
Hamish Watson was Player of the Six Nations, wasn't he?
Yeah,
no, that was last year, wasn't it? Oh, I completely lost. I don't know.
I'm sure Hamish.
I just think there's no chance, given the other guys that are in the lineup, there's no chance he doesn't win it.
Yeah, I assume you agree, Johnny.
Yeah, I also think it's really bizarre that there aren't any South Africans or All Blacks on the list, which is surprising considering that they beat the Lions. They've just finished off World Cup. The All Blacks again have had a fairly phenomenal year. So quite surprising. Again, there's nobody been nominated. You've got Maro Itoje, Michael Hooper, who's been superb to watch, Samu Kerevi, and Antoine Dupont with Itoje. So I don't know. Again, for me, like on that list, having watched a lot of international rugby, Antoine Dupont has just been a phenomenon for the past 2, 3, 4 seasons. Again, it's been a long time since a Frenchman won it. So it'd be good to see. But again, the way he carries himself, the way he goes in the top 14 week in, week out, every single time he takes the field, and for the French team, he's been a cut above the rest. So for me, Toto Dupont gets it.
And I don't think they would have competed with Antoine Dupont, Benji, but did you know a prop has never been nominated in 20 years for this, and only 5 hookers ever? So do we need to start a bit of a campaign for more front rowers to be nominated?
150%. No, but jokes aside, I mean, when you think of how influential a Carl Heyman was at a certain point of time for the All Blacks, when you think of Beast, definitely. Yeah, definitely. How the hell was he never even mentioned? It's not possible. I'm not saying not having a title. That's a different conversation, because if the same year, you know, you've got Dan Carter, Richie McCaw, I don't know, Brian O'Driscoll and Beast, yeah, okay, you pick. It's not easy, but not even nominated. I think it's actually it's a disgrace, really. It's people,
petition started, mate.
Yeah. But honestly, it's like not even taking their role for what it is. I keep on repeating it 1,000 times. You want more space in rugby, then start loving Scrum more. It's the only reason why we still have a little space is because we can get a Winnie Antonio and an Antoine Dupont to play in the same team. And Antoine Dupont, he's going to prove me wrong any second, but at the moment can't scrummish for shit. And that's probably the only thing he can't do. And hallelujah, because it makes me feel a little bit better about what I used to do. But it's true that it's the only reason why we have a bit of space, a few gaps here and there, is because guys get so tired in this crazy energy eating machine, which is a scrum. Then you need the different body shapes, and that's the only reason why we love our game so much, because you need a bit of diversity of body types, of compositions, of weight, of way of handling yourself and all that. Otherwise it would be mega boring. So start loving people. You got to forget about the petition about World Rugby front rowers. Petition about keeping the scrum exactly as it is, but people just showing a bit of love for it.
Right, before we get your predictions in, it's about time we did our meter moment of the week. Do you want to talk us through it, Benji?
Well, the meter obviously being the best way in the world to make sure that your meat is cooked properly by testing its temperature. You don't want it to be too hot. And so the idea is to stick on to the best moment that we appreciated the most, that we thought that was the hottest, that the best. Let's face it, I would love to take something out of France, Georgia. I would love to say that my meter moment was probably my dinner in Bordeaux on Saturday night, but the reality is that you gotta take your hats off to the Irish, and just to say that Ireland New Zealand was absolutely out of this world in terms of intensity. That I thought they did a sensational job. And I'll give my meter moment, not so much to you could have given it to this number 6. It's Colin Doris, is that his name?
Kaelin Doris, yeah.
Kaelin Doris. Sorry for the pronunciation. Wow, did he have a storm of a game? Scored a brilliant try, ran for 80 minutes absolutely nonstop. But I'll give it to the big fella to show a bit of love. I thought Ty Furlong had one storm of a game. I mean, and there's not even
nominated.
One moment. He absolutely flipping dominated for 80 minutes, and their scrum was sensational. But I think his ball handling ability was out of this world. And you talking about ball possession, there was moments where everybody was on the floor and he was the big fella there, and then either trucking it up to get a bit of momentum or just hitting it behind, but for Johnny Sexton almost on the spot. So my meter moment of the weekend will be just the overall 80-minute performance of Furlong.
Mate, in complete agreement. Just in general, again, for a team that hadn't beaten New Zealand to have now beaten them, I think 3 times in the past 5 years, something crazy like that. Again, meter moment of the weekend for me is the Irish performance. 100% agree, Benji. Again, the thought that went behind it, Farrell, O'Connell, the manner in which they executed on the field, the players, the way they performed, and as I mentioned before, the way they made New Zealand look like ordinary human beings, which we never think they are. That performance by Ireland, again, I agree with you, Benji, 100% was my meter moment of the weekend.
Hard to argue with that. And we look forward to giving it to someone in a France jersey next week.
It would be beautiful.
That was Johnny and Benji's meter moment of the week. And meter is the world's #1 wireless meat thermometer. And they've made over 9 million cooks better with their revolutionary app as well. So it's no surprise their users are growing rapidly every day. If you've ever said your pork or turkey's dry, then meter's for you. And you can use it on a barbecue, in an oven, or in a pan. Enter a whole new world of cooking and join the Metaverse at meter.com, and just use the code FrenchPod10 at checkout for 10% off any full price item as well. Well, let's finish off by getting your predictions in then for the upcoming weekend of the Autumn Nations Series. And it's one final chance to win some pints and prove you know more than Johnny and Benji in the Guinness Pint Predictor on Match Pint. Anyone listening could join in, even if you haven't done it for the past few weeks, and you might just win yourself a pint or 2 of Guinness. It's really simple. Just download the Match Pint app, predict the scores, beat your mates, and win pints of Guinness. And to compete against Johnny and Benji, all you need to do is enter our private league with the code LERUGBY. The overall winner of that will get a very special prize at the end as well. Do you know how you're getting on, Johnny, Benji? How you doing?
I don't know, mate. I thought I was doing pretty well until last week was a massacre. I was cheering for Scotland, and they.
Oh, you idiot!
And
why did you do that?
And then I actually backed NZ against Ireland, I think. So for a close win. So completely pooped now.
You can't be doing worse than Johnny. What happened last week, Johnny?
Yeah. Look, it would appear that it isn't exactly hard to know more than me about this sport, because I think in every league that I'm part of in Match Point, I seem to be propping up the bottom of the table. So that's what happens, mate. You go with your gut, you go with your country, and you get absolutely panned. Yeah, I think I am rock bottom of pretty much everything. I'm even below Jim Hamilton, which is embarrassing. That is really scraping the barrel. So, yeah, get it right this weekend.
But only 18 points between you. So, it's up for grabs. You can do it, Johnny.
Just need one perfect score. I'll be back up there. Don't worry.
Well, go on. Speaking about scores, are we not going to give our predictions now?
Let's do it. Italy, Uruguay, Benji, go.
Oh, I thought you completely off guard. I was on in France, New Zealand, mate. That's what I was ready for. Was it Italy, Uruguay? I'll give Italy by 25.
Oof, Italy by 35.
Scotland, Japan, Johnny.
Scotland, closer. It's definitely going to be way closer than Japan, Ireland. And I'm hoping Scotland can do a number on them and get one up and a bit of revenge after the World Cup. So I'll go Scotland by 7.
I'll go Scotland by 12.
Ireland, Argentina.
Ireland by 14. Comfortable, I would say. Argentina, last game of the year, absolutely pooped, exhausted.
I'll go Ireland by 9.
Wales, Australia. Lots of injuries in this one.
I saw a little tweet earlier. This could be one of the first games that could almost start with uncontested scrums. That's how much they're battling. I'm going to go Australia by 4.
Ooh, I'm going to go Wales by 6.
This is where I'm going to catch you up, Benji. I can tell. Perfect score. It's coming.
England, South Africa.
South Africa to complete a clean sweep and beat England by 7.
Yeah, I've got Safa by 6.
Okay. The one we've all been waiting for.
It's about time.
Is he going to pick it? Is he going to do it? France, New Zealand, Benji?
All right. Not only will I will tell you exactly the score. That's a given. Okay. The score is going to be 17-16 for France. So France by 1. And because France are going to have 9, I was trying to work a score that actually reflected something. I'm going to score 12 points off the boot and just a 5-point try. That's 17. But New Zealand will convert their try because they will score 2. I don't know, just before halftime, or there's going to be sneaky, or just before the end, they're going to give us a proper fright. It's going to be very, very complicated all the way to the last second. But then they're going to score less penalties than us. 17-16, done deal. Antoine Dupont, man of the match, probably a striker, running on the pitch at the 62nd.
Streaker.
A streaker to come. That's for the bonus point victory in case we're equal. And then a night to be remembered and a beautiful, beautiful firework display at the end of the game.
Oh, mate, I feel your passion for this one. That was beautiful. I wish I was there with you. And as much as I love my French teammates and former teammates, I'm worried just after certain facets of that game against Georgia. I'm worried about them. And I think that they will be extremely passionate. I think they'll have a huge, amazing crowd behind them. Like you said, Benji, I think it'll also be really cool for Antoine Dupont, hopefully, to go toe-to-toe with Aaron Smith. That'll be very cool. But I don't know. I just think that they maybe don't have enough in the tank. And I think this might be a big learning lesson for them and for the coaching staff as well. So I'm going to go New Zealand, not by the biggest of margins, but New Zealand by 8 points.
Couple of differences there. Wales, Australia, France, New Zealand, all to play for on the Guinness Pint Predictor on Match Pint. And we look forward to looking back, particularly on France, New Zealand, and seeing whether all of your Nostradamus predictions come true, Benji.
Man, I can only let my heart speak, but at least, you know, I back my passport. So that's the only thing that I will add for that.
That's what Johnny did last week. It didn't turn out too well, Benji. Thanks, Benji. Thanks, Johnny. And a big thanks to all you guys for listening as well. Make sure you hit subscribe. Leave us a nice review if you can as well. In fact, if you haven't left us a review already, only takes 30 seconds. Do it. We'll read a couple out, won't we? We'll get you to read them out, Benji, next week. If anyone leaves us a nice review, leave us a question as well, a little comment. We'll get Benji to read it out next week.
Done. Agreed.
Check us out on RugbyPass as well as on YouTube, and we'll be back with another episode next week. Au revoir, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks, boys. Bye.